History of the Soul War by eddieddi. Supplemental information related to Lesson 6, Human Ship Names Post-Soul War. The lecturer looked at his class. It was only about half the total. He wasn't all that bothered. This was an out-of-hours lecture that had been prompted by several students asking about human naming systems. Mostly, why the humans named their ships differently after the Soul War.
The naming convention pre-Soul War was to name their ships after famous figures, kings, queens, explorers, warriors. The King George, the Bismarck, the Columbia, in the last case a location and a person. However, after the devastating effect of the Four Horsemen and the need to rebuild a lot of their military ships, human naming convention changed.
He clicked onto the first slide, a human fleet. Humans had a strange habit of painting their ships. These were painted in red and blue with strange writing on them. It didn't look like human text, it was angular and runic.
I will be going through a few examples from Federation data. This is known as Fleet Asir, the flagship Odin.
He highlighted a large dreadnought.
It has two escort ships, known as Feki and Geri.
He marked two more ships.
The fleet carrier is known as Freya. The humans call the fighter she carries Valkyrie fighters.
He indicated a large ship towards the middle rear, before he gestured at the rest of the fleet.
Each of these ships has a name, all from the same origin, a set of human mythology from the north of the Central European area. Additionally, the captains of each ship appears to have some kind of honorific. Odin's captain is known as Odin's son. Freya's captain is referred to as Commander Sigurd, so on and so forth.
He moved on to the next image, another fleet. This one painted in deep red and blacks with unusual flaming marks.
This fleet is referred to as the 666th Fleet. Even though humans don't have that many fleets, at least according to Federation information, when asked, the humans refused to explain why, only saying that it is the number of the beast, as if that were some kind of explanation.
He gestured at the fleet behind him.
Again, the names seem to come from mythology. The flagship Lucifer, fleet carrier Beelzebub, fly-class fighters, even though the fighters appear to be almost identical to the fighters used by the Asir fleet. Another example of the captain being given a strange title, in this case it being the Morning Star. So if you were greeting him, you would have to use the title Captain So-and-so, the Morning Star.
The lecturer looked at his notes.
We believe that the humans are taking names from mythology and ancient stories to not only impart a sense of duty and might upon the crews, allowing them to bear the names, and thus the power of such ancient stories, much like the Kursk have their bi-decade tournament winners take on the names of the saints. In that regard, the Kurskan humans are similar. They both believe that there is power in names. As a final example, I will be referring to Battlefleet Tolkien.
He changed light again, another human fleet. The paint scheme on this one appeared to be somewhat mix and match. Some ships painted in black and red with curled flaming script written on it, others in birth white, bearing some tree-like symbol. There were other symbols still, further amongst the fleet, and yet all had one unifying symbol, an unusual rune in a circle.
A story that humans cannot decide if it was a myth turned into a story, or a story written to be a myth. But nonetheless, a fleet became named after it. The black and red ships are named after the villains of the story, Ungoliant, Sauron, Melkor, while the lighter ones are named after heroes or factions within the heroes, Gandalf, Aragorn, so on and so forth. The only oddity is that their fleet carrier appears to be named after a place, Rohan, and the fighters themselves named after the people of that place. And as before, the commander of the fleet has a unique title, of the Valar. As you can see, humans have a unique talent for naming things, at least things that interest them. However, sometimes that talent can fail them. For example, the humans named a rather specific battle from about 100 years ago, the battle where all the chips were down. Not inventive or stirring, but at the time the name was taken from the informal briefing, or so I was told.
He moved on to the last slide.
Over the years, and the smaller wars humanity has prosecuted against other stellar forces, it has been noted by scholars that each fleet appears to take on some characteristics of the mythology that it was named after. For example, there has been only one male captain of the Freya, despite human males and females being equals in the military. A large portion of the almost all male captains of the Odin have opted to wear an eye patch with a digital display. The 666th Fleet is known for vicious, underhanded tactics and brutal displays of force. While no fleet is as heavily influenced by its name and scheme and heritage, as it were, as the Horsemen, there are still clear differences in fleets.
He closed the presentation and looked at the class.
Class dismissed. The next lecture will be on the Martian battlefront and the events that transpired there.